shop. Today I just wanted to show you what I've been up to lately. I have found this wonderful yard sale find and picked it up. It's a 1914 Singer and it's a treadle operated sewing machine, and I have restored this as to the closest original condition as that I can. It was all rusty, and what's neat about this is most of all of the gold flake on here and the decals are in pristine condition. Usually you don't find that. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, this is going to be a wonderful piece. The problem with it was the treadle desk, or the sewing machine table, was in terrible condition. And so that's a little bit of what I'm showing you today. Here is the top to it. This is pretty much what it looked like when I got it. There was no finish on it. You can see just a little bit left of the clear. I have glued all the edges back together, but all these edges of the laminate were lifted. I've gone around and glued everything back down. There is a chip here still that will show, and I'm going to leave it there. But everything else, I've stripped all of this down. I've stripped all of the drawer assembly down, and I'm stripping the drawers, and I'll be showing you the last part of the stripping in the drawers today. And I just wanted to let you know that though this is what we come for, the beautiful piece of machinery that was made back in the early 1900s, there's still a lot of work sometimes to restoring of the rest of the treadle table. And the treadle is down here back behind me. The paint on it is terrible. I'll need to restore that too. But we're going to move on to the stripping next. So I'm getting ready to do the stripping of these two drawers here. And the stripping gel that I'm going to use is called Citrus Strip. And this is it right here. I picked it up at Lowe's or Home Depot, one of the two stores. And it actually does really well. And so I think I put it on generously, and then sometimes I'll leave it overnight, sometimes I'll leave it for an hour or so and come back out. With paints on finishes, the paint sometimes takes a little longer to get the paints off. But for this here, it might only take about an hour or so for it to get it to the point where you can strip that off. So this stuff's fairly toxic, so I use some gloves, use the good gloves, and get ready to do it. What we want to do here is we want to put it on the surface generously, and then we're going to put like a saran wrap over the top of it so it'll seal in the moisture and not let the air get to it, so that the acid in this stripper will remove everything without drying out before we can scrape it off. So for the project that we have here, I've been using the Citrus Strip, and I just in this little Ziploc bag, I just have a old paintbrush. In fact, this is an old one. I had two of them on hand, and so they were just cheap, 90-cent paintbrushes, just to dab it on. I have a metal scraper to scrape all of the Citrus Strip off of it, but if you want to be a little more careful with it, if you're not careful, you can use like a plastic scraper. Plastic scraper is probably a better idea for most people. And then you'll need some mineral spirits to neutralize the Citrus Strip when it is done. And we'll be going through this whole process at that time to show you what I do. And then some steel wool, 4/0 steel wool, and that's really important. And then lots of paper towels, and we'll go through those. But for right now, we're just going to apply it. And what I do is I just dump a bunch on and start spreading it. It's good to just dab it if you can. So it's pretty thick. I mean, it'll stay without dripping off of there. It'll pretty much stay on there if you just get it on there nice and thick, so you don't have to worry about that. And this part right here is a little more tricky because I can't just do one side. I've got to do all four if I can all at once. And so just kind of dab it up, get it around. That's kind of too thin, but that is great how it's nice and thick like that. Put that down, add a little bit more to it. Now this is my third restoration of a vintage sewing machine. The first one, a wonderful lady has had a great relationship with my wife. I asked her if I could restore her sewing machine, and she said, sure, why don't you do that and give it to your wife? And so I restored it. It's an 1879 Household brand sewing machine. It's beautiful. It works really well. The sewing is wonderful on it. I'm going to try to get it back to her so that she can hand that down to her family through the generations now that it's back working again. But it was taken apart. The interesting part about that project was that the table was in really good shape, but the sewing machine had been taken apart and needed some fixing. And so that was my first one. I learned a lot on it, and I've never sewn in my life. And so once I started putting that together, I realized how the tensions work on the threads and the things that make it important for a good stitch. And once I started to learn that, with the limited information, I didn't have a book to tell me what needed to be done to get it going to a good stitch. I just kind of had to troubleshoot, hit or miss and see what I can do with it. Now here, I've got a really nice thick coat on there all around. The bottom doesn't need to be done. You can see there was some moisture somewhere along the way. And even one of these drawers had the smell of old men's cologne, the kind that used to come in those glass cars back in the day. But boy, I could smell it strong. I can remember going to Grandpa's house and smelling that, and one of these drawers still has that. So I kind of liked it. Little nostalgia. So I've got this one here. It is ready for some saran wrap. So let me show you what I do with that. So I just so happen to have a big roll of it here. And so I'm going to go ahead and lay this down right on it. Come over the top of it. And then I will cut it just long enough to grab it and wrap it up. Now I'm going to make sure it's all down there so that the air can't get into this finish here, and let it do its work. Really, that's what we want to see it. We just want it down nice and tight. And I'm going to leave that for a few hours, and I'll probably come back a little bit later and see what I can do about getting that stripped off of there, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm to that point. So I'll finish this one up, and then I've also got the underbelly of the table that still needs to be stripped also, and then we'll maybe do some finishing on it and put the whole thing back together again and see how it turns out. But for now, we'll sign off. All right, it has been a couple of hours, and it's time to check to see how our stripper is doing on the wood. You get a glove on for protection, and this is where you don't want to splash this in your eyes or get it on your skin. So always good to use your PPE. And so here we go. Let's take this off. If I can find the end here. All right, get that directly off of there. Throw that right in the trash can. And you can see that it's not orange anymore so much, it's brown because of the finish has been sucked in, it's pulled it off. So I'll just take my knife here, and I'm just gonna take it right across there and wipe it off. This comes off pretty easy because there's not a real thick layer on there. And right now I'm just trying to scrape the most of it off. My next step will be to neutralize it and get the rest of it off with steel wool. So that's about all I do there with that portion of it. And then the next part I do here is clean this up here on the table, get the extras wiped up. Is at this point you're going to need your steel wool and your mineral spirits here. So I've got a brand new steel wool here, and I'm going to just dump a whole bunch in there. It's going to want to go right through it. But this is where I take my steel wool and I rub it on there. And right now it's doing two things. It's neutralizing the stripper that I put on there, the citrus strip, and it's also taking off the extra stuff that didn't come off with my scraper. And it's kind of cleaning it up, allowing me to move on to my next piece pretty quick. Online, if you watch people do this, they go to an extra step. They put more citrus strip on a piece of steel wool, and then they do more of this. But that's on projects where there's a lot more paint and it's a lot harder to get it off. But for me here and doing one of these tables, this is really all I found that you need to do. And then maybe put a little sandpaper to it in the end. So once I do that, I'm done with that part right there. I grab a paper towel and I just wipe my project here and kind of wipe off all the extra, anything that's on there. It also kind of dries it out a little bit. And that's pretty much it on that piece. It's just that easy. So I have one more of these and to do, one more drawer, which is right here. Use the same process on it. And then this is the underneath drop down bin. The sewing machine from the table sits right here, and the sewing machine drops down inside of here so you can hide it, so you can use your sewing table as a desk or something like that. So I need to strip this out and get to the bottom of it, and then it's a matter of going back and refinishing in a day or two after it's all dry and putting it all back together, and then also working on the treadle. So until then. All right, it's a new day. It's actually been 2 days since I finished up the last piece of stripping of this wood. And so today I wanted to get with you on just to show you what I do basically just to finish it up and get it ready and prepped for a new finish that I want to put on there. So really all I'm doing is I'm going to knock everything down. All of this, the grain has stood up on this because it was wet. And so this is a 220 block, and I've got some sandpaper. I just didn't bring them out, just standard paper sandpaper, and 220 grit. And some of the spots that maybe I didn't see because when it was wet, it's hard to see a clear finish on it that you didn't quite get up. Although most everything on here had come up from that stripper. Just a little pad that this is for metal. So it says anyways, but it's a finishing pad. You can either use the green Scotch-Brite or this little more coarse Scotch-Brite, as long as you finish it up with 220 sandpaper. And I've got this here, which is just an orbital sander, 220 grit sandpaper. And you can go finer if you want, but what I'm going to do with this project, because it was in such bad shape, I wasn't really sure that it was going to turn out. So I'm going to do a little something different with this, and we'll see how it turns out in the end, but we'll get there later. All I'm really going to do is just run this across the top of the surfaces. Around the edges, I'm going to be real careful. I don't really want to round these edges here because I want to keep the original integrity of the piece. And I'll just try to knock everything down to where I can get it nice and smooth, and any extra finish that's still on there, get that knocked off, and then we'll go from there. Now, you can see here that I've just kind of roughly put it together. I've got my drawers and the drawer case here that the drawers fit into. The top here, it will eventually come over like this, and And then this here actually does a lift to where this will come up here like this. I'll take that off so you can see it. And the sewing machine will be able to fold down inside there. This will fold back over the top like that. And this will come back over and it'll be a table just like you see it now. So for my purposes, I probably won't really keep it this way. I want everybody to see this fine piece of art and usable sewing machine, and be able to actually feel like I can walk up to it at any time and start sewing on it. So I will finish sanding this up and getting it prepped, and we'll be back a little bit later. And here we are, it's finally done. It's been about a month on and off, been working on this, and now we're to the end of it. It has turned out beautiful. Everything on it is original. And there are some that might say, well, those knobs on the drawers don't look original. They are. I shined them up. Let me show you. The patina on the back I left because this piece is for me. I wanted to make it look like it did when it was an original sewing machine from the factory, and those are brass, and I wanted those to shine like they would have from original. I've used a honey minwax stain on the finish. I wanted it to look as if it was 114 years old, and in time it has gotten darker with age, and this is about the color that it should have been. So it's just turned out beautiful in the finish. Sewing machine here, if you can remember what it looked like in the first couple of pictures, At the beginning of the video, you can see how I brought it back to life, and it is really beautiful. Anyway, just wanted to show you the beautiful piece of art that this really was. Okay, this is it. I finally finished with this project. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work, but I hope it lasts for another 100 years so that my family and generations to come can enjoy this, and maybe do a couple sewing projects, maybe make some camping gear, that sort of thing here in the shop. So thanks so much for watching.